2014 Mercedes Benz S63. Now, if you're thinking we're going to do the same semi-autonomous driving gag, I have one sentence for you. Wir fahren jetzt mit Alphatterbach, Mielcher und Grossesbach. Verstehen Sie das? Today we're dealing with, an extra, say, 150 horsepower on top of the already quick S550. And I think with a car like this, let's put the engine off to the side. Let's talk about size and weight first. 4,806 pounds. Wow, 4,806 pounds. In fairness, this is a very large car. It's a 124-inch wheelbase with a 202-inch length. To give you an idea of basis of comparison, remember that new Mark 7 GTI we just drove? That's got a 101-inch wheelbase. We're talking almost 2 feet different. So that's kind of where some of the weight comes from. But the folks in Grossesbach got a hold of this thing, and they're like, you know what? We want to make it lighter weight. So a lot of the body panels are aluminum. The block, the heads are all aluminum, and they even went so far as to the battery. This one has a lithium-ion battery. That's quite a length to go to lower weight on really an almost 5,000-pound car, which brings us back to the whole power thing. Right? Anytime anybody's asked about this thing, I've literally giggled like a schoolgirl. 577 horsepower. You ready for this? 664 pound-feet of torque. Let that roll around your brain a little bit. 664 pound-feet of torque. And what's really interesting, that power comes in at 2,250 RPM and stays flat. You get that peak torque all the way up to 3,750 RPM. So the power band on this thing, super flat, super wide. So here's a great example. I'm going to downshift before I go into a sharp turn here. There's a little bit of a learning curve when you're doing that in a car this size. The idea is to figure out where you want to place the weight. And I've talked about this analogy before. It's like an old Supra. You have to decide where you're going to put that weight, but still controllable. And there's a reason why. It has an aromatic suspension, so it can adjust the firmness as well as the height of the suspension. Now let's get back to the one of many comical points about this car. This isn't the biggest, baddest S-Class out there. There's actually one above this. It is the S65. That is the one that is the 12-cylinder twin-turbo, as if this isn't enough. Like the numbers on that one, 621 horsepower, 738 pound-feet of torque. I mean, that is 100 pounds more than the last ZR1 Corvette. But even that being the biggest, baddest S-Class out there, it's actually got a couple of low-tech things to it. It's a 3-valve as opposed to a 4-valve per cylinder. It's sequential fuel injection as opposed to direct injection. And believe it or not, it's slower to 60. So it wasn't until recently that I've become a fan of Mercedes-AMG cars. And that was really because of the transmissions. They were generally torque converter automatics. It was kind of lagging in the competition in terms of performance sedans, but recently they've kind of gotten with the program by putting in a dual clutch system. It's a 7-speed. It can be operated in 3 modes. You can do a comfort mode, which we are not in right now. You can do a sport mode, or you can do the one we're in now, which is a manual mode, and you shift via these paddles that are on the steering wheel. And that brings up the important point of what that transmission is connected to. In the US, this car is only offered with the 4MATIC, the all-wheel drive. In Europe, it is offered with a 2-wheel drive. My personal preference in a car like this, I would much prefer to have the 2-wheel drive, especially with that kind of power. I mean, if I lived in like New York or something like snowbelt area, yeah, of course I want the 4MATIC. But then would I really take this car out in the snow? I don't know. And this is where we get to another humorous thing about this car. It's not about the power. Even at 577 horsepower, 664 pound-feet of torque, the minute you open the door, you get it about this car. It's all about the interior. This is art. Like, for example, that speaker grill, you want to take that speaker grill out of this car, put it up on the wall in your home, put proper lighting around it, invite like your hipster friends over, have a wine and cheese party, and talk about what the artist did to create that speaker grill. Forget about the seats. The dash top super top grains of leather that have double stitching, but wait, there's more. Instead of putting piping like in a Rolls-Royce or a Bentley, there's another bit of leather in between the stitching. So it's kind of like piping, but it isn't. Anything you touch, this trim around the steering wheel, the shifter paddles, the window switches, like I've never felt window switches. I mean, it's like they're kind of like strangely arousing when you touch them, and it's weird like that. Even the sunshade that closes is suede. But that still isn't enough. See the clock? It isn't a clock. It's a watch. And not just any watch, it's an IWC of Schaffenhausen. We're talking, you would roll into some like watch shop on Madison Avenue and pay the equivalent of a Toyota Prius just to get an IWC watch. Once you let this whole thing wash over you, you start to realize there is no competition for this thing. I mean, the BMW 7 Series and the XJ, they ain't competition. Actually, a better way to put this car is a bargain at $167,000. And here's why. Because really it does have competition. And that competition is the Bentley. And not the Continental, it is the Bentley Mulsanne. Which brings up a really good point. If you're the head of like a G8 country going to a meeting in Malta, or if you're like one of the guys that live in Connecticut that commute to Wall Street to rape and pillage our economy once again, what would you buy? Because think about it, if you can afford a $167,000 car, you probably can afford the $220 for the S65, and you probably could stretch it a little bit, maybe have one less, a yacht, and get the $350,000 Mulsanne. Because really, any way you slice it, a Mulsanne's kind of around that money. So I'd be interested to know what you guys would buy. But not just what would you choose. Would you choose the S63, the S65, or the Bentley Mulsanne? And why would you choose that car? Actually, in that Chevrolet SS film we had, one guy came up with a really good comment. I said, hey, choose between the SS and the Pontiac G8, and this guy Ryan, he came up with this idea of, I don't want either. I want the outside of the G8, but the inside of the SS. I like the way that guy thinks. So hit us up in the comments below, or hit us up on our social networks, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Which one of the three cars would you choose, and why? S63, S65, or Bentley Mulsanne? I am going to cry like a schoolgirl when they come take this car. I mean, this thing is a weapon. Have you guys ever been to Detroit and you see like that fist at the intersection of Jefferson and Woodward? You know, it's like it's strength. This thing is that fist, but wrapped in the nicest lambskin glove you have ever touched in your life. So click here to watch one of our 250 other episodes, click here to subscribe, and can we ask you guys a favor? Can you watch these within the first 36 hours? Because it gets us more views, which gets us more dollars, which get you more episodes. And of course, follow us, MotoManTV, all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'll see you guys next time.